This is Ethan, and I'm here with Dave, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 126-inch.
On this week's episode, we interview Scott Barber, the director of This Is GWAR, the new GWAR documentary featuring Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Welcome back to Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. Dave, we got so much great feedback after talking to Joe Kraus and hearing all about the Prosthetic Lips Weird Al tribute album over the past 2 weeks. It's just been so much fun.
Yeah, some of our listeners are actually calling for us to make a tribute album.
And Dave, you and I, we love that idea. So without further ado, we are pleased to announce...
Oh, that sound means we have a message on the 347 Spatula Hotline. The 347 Spatula Hotline, the official hotline of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, is sponsored by Angel Valenzuela and David Cash, two amazing Weird Al fans and longtime podcast supporters.
I can't remember what we were talking about before the spatula message noise, but anyway, it doesn't matter. All right, Frank, let's hear the message.
Hey guys, Mike Minnick here. I'm sitting in the parking lot after just having left a Cybertronic Spree show. If you ever get the chance to see them, do it. They did an amazing job. They didn't play Dare to Be Stupid, but they played plenty of other amazing songs and just rocked the place. Honestly, second best performer I've ever seen. Just amazing.
Wow, Mike, thank you for that awesome review. We are so happy that you had a great time at that concert.
And wow, the Cybertronic Spree are the second best performers that Mike has ever seen. I wonder who's number one. I know, he must have been to a recent Ethan Christian and the Eligible Spatulars show.
Wow, you're right, Dave. That's probably who he was talking about. Now, if you head over to our Facebook group, group.2000inch.com, Mike shared a photo that the band took from the stage, and you can see Mike right in the audience wearing a purple Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast t-shirt.
Thank you so much for sharing that picture, Mike. And thank you very much for supporting the podcast by wearing one of our t-shirts to the concert.
If you want to get your own purple Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast t-shirt, you can do so by heading over to shop.2000inch.com.
And if you want to check out our interview with Hot Rod and RC from the Cybertronic Spree, you can do so by heading on over to our website and listening to episode 80-inch.
Say, Dave, do you have a watch on? Because mine just says that it's time for This Week in Weird Al-related news!
Yeah, I do have a watch. Mine says 32 minutes past 1800 hours. It's in military time.
Well, you might want to get that watch checked, Dave. But hey, I wanted to tell you that our listener and our friend and the designer of the amazing Gill and Chill artwork, Owen Watson, posted on Facebook about a very exciting Weird Al find.
With the new updates to the Mac and iPhone iOS, there is a cool update to Apple Music, Apple's flagship music streaming service.
This new update allows you to listen to what's called spatial audio with Dolby Atmos on select songs and albums.
What Owen noticed is that Weird Al's Straight Outta Linwood album is available with Dolby Audio, and more importantly, the Dolby version of Canadian Idiot has a big surprise.
Now, much like the concert version of Canadian Idiot, the Dolby version features the cooing, or the coo parts that do not appear on the album version of the song.
Bermuda joined in the conversation. He said the Dolby version of Canadian Idiot is called the Great White North Mix, but he couldn't recall why it wasn't on the album.
The Great White North is also the name of the series of famous SCTV sketches, of course, about the two Canadian brothers, that features the same exact coo noises.
If you want to hear this newly discovered version, you'll need a subscription to Apple Music, and you'll need a device capable of listening to spatial audio. So good luck with that.
Last week, Weird Al was quoted in an article on Spin.com regarding the 30th anniversary of the release of Nirvana's groundbreaking Nevermind album.
Al talks about how his music video for Smells Like Nirvana used the same set, the same janitor and cheerleaders, and even many of the same fans that Nirvana had in their Smells Like Teen Spirit music video.
He then goes on to say that when they did the cover for Off the Deep End, which of course is a parody of the Nevermind album cover, they used the same photographer and the same swimming pool.
He then cracks a joke about the lawsuit that's been in the news recently, suggesting that he should probably sue himself over that album cover. So this is exciting news. At Dysequilibrium on Instagram just released a brand new video called Bermuda Explains.
Yes, the first episode is called The Hernia Rap, and it is our understanding that more of these are going to be coming out. And of course, Weird Al fans should probably know Dysequilibrium from her amazing Weird Al mashup videos where she takes interview questions and matches it up with old videos. It's so cool. I wish we could just ask her all about it.
Hey guys, it's me, Dice.
Oh!
So what do you want to ask me about?
Yeah, so Dice, you just launched this new web series called Bermuda Explains. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, sure. So this is something I've been working on for around a month now, and as you said before, I've been making these videos where I mash up interview questions with old footage to give context to that old footage. But I kind of reached a point where I finished watching all the interview videos that I could find out there, and I still wanted context for certain things, and I found Bermuda's email and I just reached out to him. So these videos that I will be releasing, they're each on a specific thing. So like last video I just released is about the hernia wrap. I have much more coming out. I won't spoil any of them, but I have about 6 more coming out.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have one more special one that Dave may know about because I emailed him before about this.
Oh.
Dave, remember when I emailed you about your website?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it either, but yeah, that'll be a really, really fun, exciting episode. I'm glad that I could help you out on that.
Oh, I appreciate it. For that one, I also interviewed some other people, so that will be exciting. And yeah, every week I'll be releasing a new episode, and I hope people like it.
Well, I can say I absolutely love the first one, and I cannot wait for the other ones. And I've already been a fan of your work. You find some really great obscure interview clips. I don't like a lot of these I haven't even seen before, and I feel like I've seen every Weird Al video. And you do a great job of matching it up with, you know, relevant footage, and it's just so great. And getting to hear Bermuda tell it in his own words, and you know, it's in complete context, is very great. So Dice, we can follow you on Instagram.com/Dysequilibrium. You picked a very, very complicated name for us. Is that your actual name? Where does that name come from? Dysequilibrium.
It's just something I thought of when I was 15, and I didn't know it would turn into something like this. It was probably a bad idea. I should have changed it, but oh well, it's a part of me now.
Well, I know how to spell it now, so I'm not worried. But anyone who's listening, it's Dysequilibrium. It's very Weird Al related, of course. You're on Instagram, you're on YouTube, you're on TikTok, and I see you post stuff on Reddit as well. So there's a lot of great ways to catch your content and a lot of ways to check out Bermuda Explained. So is the next one coming out on Friday?
Yes, it is at 7 p.m. Eastern.
And you won't give us a little preview of the title or anything?
Okay, I'll give you a hint. It happened in 1991.
Okay.
So, you hardcore fans can figure that one out.
If anyone figures it out and sends us a message and they are correct when it drops on Friday, Dave, I feel like we should send someone a sticker. How's that sound?
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to seeing everything Weird Al related that happened in 1991 come through our inbox.
Incredible. Dice, thank you so much. Thanks for all the work you do for the Weird Al fan community, getting these great videos together. And so excited to catch more of these great Bermuda Explains videos. And the special one. I can't wait to see what you and Dave were working on.
Oh, no problem. And it's really been a pleasure, like, getting to know the fan community and everything. And, like, these videos I make, they're very self-indulgent, but it's amazing to see how many people out there like them as well.
Yeah, there's nothing else quite like it out there, so it's definitely filling a big need in the community, and it's just so much fun. And I mean, it looks like some of your videos have gone viral, so I highly recommend people checking out your Instagram, your TikTok, and your YouTube just to catch all the different angles of Dysequilibrium. Dice, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you guys for letting me talk on here. All right, bye.
A big thank you to Dysequilibrium. We look forward to more videos and episodes of Bermuda Explains.
Now, this is awesome. Our friend, supporter, listener, fellow collector, Weird Al fan, yada yada, Jason McDonald sent us something pretty stinking majestic.
There is a video posted this month by the Grunge YouTube channel called Why You Haven't Heard from Weird Al in a While. And not only does it feature some Weird Al facts, it also mentions our podcast.
At about 9 minutes into the video, they not only mention our podcast, but they also show our official logo designed by Heather Malone. How cool.
The description of the video references that this video comes from an article on grunge.com that was posted way back in May.
And yes, that article also mentions Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. They say there's a weekly podcast called Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, which has released over 100 episodes worth of interviews and discussions about Yankovic's life.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, we want to thank Grunge for the shout out, and we are very honored to be included among all of Al's many other accomplishments.
And so after Jason alerted us to this video and article, we were also alerted about it by none other than David Grant.
Whoa, 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 whoa. The David Grant?
That's right, Dave. The David Grant.
All right, just to be sure, we're talking about the same guy here. The David Grant who sometimes goes by Sebastian Shepard?
Yep, the David Grant who sometimes goes by Sebastian Shepard.
The same David Grant who also does comedy rap under the name MC Choskin?
Yes, the same David Grant who also does comedy rap under the name MC Chalkskin?
The David Grant who has a TikTok where he has viral videos, not viral videos, videos with 1,832 views, videos where he's wearing a Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast t-shirt, and saucy videos where he's shirtless?
Yes, the David Grant who has a TikTok where he has viral videos, not viral videos, videos with 1,832 views, videos where he's wearing a Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast t-shirt, and saucy videos where he's shirtless.
Wow, that is great news that he found that video too. Thank you for sending that to us, David Grant. Now, even if we might have already seen something exciting like that, we always encourage our listeners to send them along to Ethan and me or post them in the Facebook group to ensure that we absolutely do not miss it.
Let's reward David Grant for his hard work by following at SEB_SHEP on TikTok and visiting wolfinwool.com and merching it up.
Well, I can see by the old wristwatch on my arm, it is time for This Week in Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West related news.
A few weeks back, we mentioned that the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West teamed up with Swiss composer and guitarist Jörg Kindl for a series of musical collaborations.
The third and final collaboration, One Earth, One Ocean, was released last Friday, September 24th, and is available on snd.click/Swiss Guitar.
But that's not all in Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West related news.
BY Music, a California-based record label devoted to new age music, recently signed the 2021 Grammy Award winner for Best New Age Album, our very own Jim Kimo West.
Along with the announcement on their Instagram and Facebook, they also announced a brand new single by Jim Kimo West, Blossom, will be released on October 20th.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, congratulations to the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West, and we look forward to everything that this pairing will bring. And I can also see by the wristwatch on my arm that it is time for This Week in Ethan, Christian, and the Eligible Spatulars related news. This is a reminder, Ethan, Christian, and the Eligible Spatulars will be opening for Eddie Pepitone tonight. That's Wednesday, September 29th at the High-Low in North Adams, Massachusetts.
And also a reminder that Ethan, Christian, and the Eligible Spatulars will be opening for the Found Footage Festival at the Linda in Albany, New York on Weird Al's 62nd birthday, October 23rd. Be sure to follow at Spatulars on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Oh, speaking of Ethan, Christian, and the Eligible Spatulars, how was your show last week, Ethan?
Well, it was a lot of fun. We even premiered our brand new vegan song, and afterwards, we had Wizard Burger for dinner.
This week's episode is brought to you in part by vegan burrito restaurant Burrito in Troy, New York, home of the 2-pound double wrapped in a quesadilla Burrito and Wizard Burger in Albany, New York. Come on down to Burrito and Burrito your Burrito, or hop on over to Wizard Burger for mouth-watering, loaded, dare I say, beefy vegan burgers. From Troy to Albany to Uranus, Burrito and Wizard Burger feed the hungry with out-of-this-world, plant-based, real food. Always vegan style. Visit burritosquared.com or wizardburger.com and order ahead.
Dave, I know you've had Burrito, but I cannot wait for you to try Wizard Burger. They are pretty stinking majestic.
Well, I can see by the old wristwatch on my arm that it is time for this week's interview.
Dave and I are thrilled to be welcoming to the podcast. He is the director of This Is GWAR, a documentary about the band GWAR featuring none other than Weird Al Yankovic. We're so excited. Please welcome Scott Barber. How's it going, Scott?
It's going awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get to talk about the documentary, but also about Weird Al.
Yeah, us too.
Well, I guess let's start with how you got involved with this documentary.
Okay. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, this is my second film, my second documentary. First, I made a documentary with my childhood friend Adam Sweeney called The Orange Years. That's Years, Y-E-A-R-S, and it's not about Donald Trump. It's about Nickelodeon. We get that every time we post. People think that it's like it's one of those jokes that you get a million times, and we're like, oh man, it was funny at first. Now it's like getting really old. But yeah, I did that documentary. That was my first one, and I met a lot of really great people doing that. And I had a friend. I was kind of thinking, what should the next one be? What's something else that would be really fun to do a documentary about? And one of my friends knew GWAR, knew the guys in GWAR.
Oh wow!
And he's in a band. He's a great guy. He's actually part of the film too. His name is Rocky Moon, and he's in a band called the American Sharks, and they're awesome. And he's also one of the funniest guys I've ever met. And he was telling me about how he had Thanksgiving at GWAR's house, and I was like, okay, that's the funniest thing. like that imagery was like so bizarre, and I was like, I gotta know more. And the more I kind of learned about these people, I was fascinated. Like already GWAR is this fascinating thing. You know, for people that don't know, they're kind of half rock and roll band, or maybe 1/3 rock and roll band, 1/3 sci-fi movie, and then 1/3 like theater. Like it's just crazy. And you know, they dress up as monsters, and they have like dinosaurs and robots and all this stuff on stage, and people get their heads cut off. And when you go to a GWAR concert, you just get showered with blood, like all this fake blood and slime, and you just look like, I mean, you look like you've killed somebody whenever you're done. And it's a truly amazing experience. You know, I had seen GWAR before, but now, you know, I filmed probably 4 or 5 concerts right in the front, and it is just an amazing experience. But, you know, all that is to say, I was already pretty amazed by them. But then once he started telling me more about them, I was like, man, they're really fascinating. You know, they're not even really a band. They consider themselves more of an art collective.
Oh,
wow. Really smart dudes. Yeah. Like half the people that are in GWAR don't play instruments. Like the guys that make that stuff,
Really?
they're every bit as much a member of the band as, say, the guitar player or the drummer. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
And they're real smart and real. They're in on the joke. You know, that's another thing that I think some people don't know about GWAR, and that is that it's funny.
Right.
People sometimes like, oh, isn't that like Slipknot or something like that? And it's like, not really, because they're more like Spinal Tap. Like they're a funny band. They're a satire of all of the excesses of heavy metal.
Right.
And yeah, so my friend, you know, I was looking for another documentary to make after the Orange Years. The Orange Years was kind of wrapping up, the Nickelodeon movie, and my friend Rocky had been on tour with GWAR, and I said, why don't you pitch them? See if you can pitch me to make a documentary about them. And he did, and they were all about it. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And a lot of the fantastic producers and camera people that I had met on my first journey with the Nickelodeon movie, I had some connections, so to speak, because of that. So I used, I brought those guys onto this one, and they were able to help me in the areas I could not, such as hooking me up with Weird Al Yankovic.
Well, we have a million questions about Weird Al's involvement, but I'm really curious, so you said you had seen GWAR before. You went into this whole process as a fan of GWAR then, right?
Yes and no. I've always been into rock and roll, heavy metal, and punk and stuff like that. So I always knew of GWAR. I knew who they were. But it's not like the GWAR fans are called bohabs, and those are people that just live and die by GWAR. I wasn't that.
Okay.
And I've kind of found that in some ways that helps you. There's a mentor that I have, a really amazing guy called Randall Lobb. And he directed the Ninja Turtles doc and the He-Man doc, and he did a Dark Crystal doc. And that was one thing he always said, if you come across as a fan, you can be a fan, but if you come across as a fan, it's way more difficult to make the doc because people kind of look at you as you're a fan of mine. And I did not want this doc to be a GWAR fandom doc where the only people that would like it would be GWAR fans or even heavy metal fans. I wanted it to be something that just anybody could get into, even if you never heard of them before. It's something that you would be into because it's such a bonkers story. I mean, already it's crazy. They're this weird theatrical troupe that goes from town to town spraying blood on people. They've killed every president, every celebrity. Yeah. They're already crazy and bonkers. But then also like the lives that these guys and gals have lived is crazy. It's like a movie. Like I didn't have to, a lot of times when you do a documentary, you have to find the story and how do you embellish it? How do you make this feel more like a movie with a climax and 3 acts? Their life already is like that. Like their life is freaking bonkers. So yeah, I was a fan, but I wasn't a huge fan. Like I couldn't have told you, like I probably could have told you Odorous Urungus and Ballsack the Jaws of Death and maybe Beefcake. But other than that, like I couldn't have told you like every single member and every single record. So yeah, definitely. And I never brought that up to the guys too, even though especially now I'm a huge GWAR fan. I love them. But I never told the guys that because I wanted to keep that level of professionalism there.
Yeah, I guess at what point in the process did you switch from, just being interested in the band to considering yourself a true GWAR fan?
I mean, pretty quick. Like I went to Richmond. Virginia, and first I just went out there and I kind of made this little mini doc about them because they've had a bunch of people try to do TV projects or documentaries or different things about them because they are so fascinating, and they're visually very amazing. So people are always like, oh, I want to do a documentary, and they point a camera at them, and then people will be like, be funny, be crazy, be GWAR. And they wanted to make sure that I was going to put in the work and be able to tell a cool story. So I kind of made this little mini doc first, and I got to know them. And I was like, man, these guys are like, I had to show them that, and then they would approve it, and then I got to make the real doc, which is understandable. It's their life, it's their career that is somebody's making a documentary on. And like I said, they've had so many bozos try to work with them, and it just went poorly. And I fell in love with them pretty quick. They're amazing people. And the story of the band, I was just fascinated by how this thing came about. And I kind of quickly realized, I was like, everything that I'm into is GWAR. I'm into rock and roll music. I'm into comedy. I'm into sci-fi. I'm into comic books. I'm into Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's all of that is wrapped up into this one thing called GWAR. It's like everything I like. And the guys and gals are just amazing people. I mean, they're just really awesome people. I feel really fortunate to get to know them and call them friends now.
That's really cool. So without giving away too much of the documentary, what can you tell us about, the formation of GWAR? How did this crazy heavy metal band with these people in costumes all come together and form?
Yeah, the abridged version, and we go into this in the doc, is basically there was this really bizarre building in Richmond, Virginia. And GWAR could have never happened anywhere but Richmond, Virginia, because it was cool, but not too cool. And prices were really low. They always say it could have never happened in New York or LA because, to make something like GWAR work, you need a large area. Like, they basically have this place in Richmond that they make their stuff and rehearse. It's like a big factory. It's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's just this crazy place. And, you need somewhere where rent isn't insane. But the first place that they ever had, it was part of this, there was this really crazy building that had milk bottles on the corner. And it was an old abandoned dairy where they, they made milk and cheese and all that crap back in the 30s. And it was abandoned. And they let kind of like musicians and squatters and artists and bohemians kind of like take up rooms there and work on their art. So like bands would move in and practice with their band in one room, and then maybe somebody else would have like a hat shop where they would make hats. And there was this guy named it was just crazy. It was just like for obviously I wasn't there, but I've done a lot of research and I've seen pictures and videos, and it just seems like this kind of like hippie commune utopia where just all these different people, you could get cheap practice or warehouse space there. And there was a dude that was in there named Hunter Jackson who was making this movie called Scumdogs of the Universe, and it was kind of like this kind of about like space barbarians that come to Earth, and it was a really cool movie that never got made, but right across the hall, there was a band called Death Piggy, which was led by a guy named Dave Brocky. And Dave and Hunter met, and they said, why don't we combine, your band with my movie, and we'll see what happens. So Death Piggy, which was Dave's band. Brilliant. Yeah, it really is. They wore Hunter's costumes, and it immediately was a hit. And pretty quickly, Hunter's movie and Dave's other band, Death Piggy, got left in the dust because this thing that was born between the two of them, GWAR, took off so quickly. And Dave brought a bunch of great musicians, and Hunter brought a bunch of great artists, and that's kind of how it happened. It was this big art collective of all these musicians and artists building this really amazing thing, way back in the mid '80s until now. Still going strong.
Wow.
So how does Al fit into GWAR and the universe of GWAR, and importantly, This Is GWAR, your documentary?
Yeah. So I'll tell you first how he fits into the GWAR doc, and then also how somehow I was able to interview Weird Al for this doc. So first of all, like I said, a bunch of people have tried to do different projects with GWAR. And I'm surprised that there isn't one. There's that show Metalocalypse on Adult Swim that is basically kind of like GWAR. If they could do it, I'm surprised GWAR hasn't been able to do anything. And maybe this documentary will help something like that happen. But there was this pilot that got made that you can find on YouTube, but it never got released. And I believe some of the people from Rick and Morty worked on this, but it was called The Animated Tales of GWAR. And it's this cartoon, and it looks great. I don't know. I don't really know the story behind why it didn't get picked up. I don't know if maybe the people that did it kind of, maybe Rick and Morty took off and they didn't have any more time for it. I don't really know. But it's a cartoon, and it's just one episode, and like I said, you can find it on YouTube, The Animated Tales of GWAR, and Weird Al is in it. He is in it, where basically GWAR wants to start doing children's parties to make more money, but they can't because they're GWAR. Right. So they steal Weird Al Yankovic's face and pretend to be him, so they can they rip his face off, and Weird Al is in it. He voices himself. And so because of that, we're like, man, Weird Al would be really great to interview if we could somehow do it. And then beyond that, we're like, not just because of that, but also because of the comedy element of GWAR that gets overlooked. Yes, they're a heavy metal band, and they're a great heavy metal band. Yes, they make these special effects, and they're great special effects. But they're also really, really, really funny. And that's one thing. We wanted someone who was known for being funny to do it. And also, they're a musical satire, which is very similar to what Weird Al does, musical satire. He also has to wear all these crazy costumes. You know, he puts on a real show, he's not just playing instruments. He wears a fat suit and wears all these suits. And so we thought he could really talk a lot about GWAR beyond just his involvement in the Animated Tales of GWAR, but also talk about what it's like to make music that's funny, and what's it like to tour, and not just tour like most bands do, but to have to lug around all these props and stuff.
Right.
So that was why we were like, man, if we could somehow get Weird Al, that would be so awesome. Like that would be great. And so we were thinking about it, and one of my producers, his name is Bill Parks. He also worked on the Nickelodeon documentary with me. He is in LA. And he is like, you know, knows people in LA. You know, he's like an actor, producer, guy out there. And he was like, well, I don't know Weird Al, but I do know Thomas Lennon. And Thomas Lennon, he's hilarious too. You know, he's on, you know, I knew him from The State. He's also Dangle on Reno 911. And he's like in every single movie as a little part. He's just one of the funniest guys ever. And, so we're like, he's like, I could probably send an email to Thomas Lennon, and maybe we could interview him, you know, and he could talk about the comedy element, because he's a funny guy too, and he wears costumes. And so we did the interview with Thomas Lennon. I mean, it shows what a kind guy he is that he took time and did our interview, you know, because Bill had met him before.
Right.
And he loved Bill and thought Bill was a great guy. So he's like, yeah, come on over. So we did it. And he's hilarious. He's in the movie. He's in the movie too. You can see him in it. And he was like, hey, is there anybody else that you got? He offered for us. He's like, is there anybody else that you guys would love to have in this that you haven't been able to get a hold of? He's like, you know, I know a lot of comedy people.
Yeah.
And immediately we knew. We're like, I mean, Weird Al would be pretty cool. And he's like, oh, yeah, hold on. And he just texted Weird Al while we were there. And he's like, oh, yeah, Al said he'd love to do it. He'd love to do it. We're like, oh, my God. Like,
wow.
We got Thomas Lennon and Weird Al to be in our movie. So that's how it came about. That's how we were able to interview Weird Al.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal.
So, you know, not a whole lot is out there yet of the film. I know there's a couple photos. Dave and I got to watch this trailer that, as of the recording, isn't really officially released. And when you see Weird Al, he's in front of like all, you know, this audio equipment. Where did you interview Al?
Okay, so that's another story that's crazy. Like, I must have done something really great in another life, because, like, I mean, we got so many cool things happened with this. So we got it. We're like, okay, we get to interview Weird Al. That's awesome. You know, like, where are we going to interview him? You know, it was in Los Angeles, and Bill, again, the guy that Bill Parks that introduced us to Thomas Lennon, that then introduced us to Weird Al. He was like, well, I know a friend that has a studio out there in LA, and maybe we could do it there. And we're like, oh, okay. Yeah, like, that seems pretty cool. A studio would be great, you know, because he's a musician, and that sounds great. He's like, you know, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's probably some studio that's out in LA that's, probably a small studio. It's someone Bill had met at a party. And we get there, and it's like a big, huge, like, for real LA studio. Like, it's where the place where we interviewed Weird Al was where they recorded the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds.
Oh, wow.
In that room. In that actual room is where... So I was like, oh, dude, you didn't tell me. This is like, I thought it was, just like I know a guy that has a little studio or something. Because we thought that would be a cool background, to get Weird Al at a mixing board or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like a real studio. Like Elvis had recorded there. Like Frank Sinatra had recorded there. It was like a for real, like old school Hollywood recording studio. So when Weird Al came in, it kind of made us feel better about ourselves. We're like, hey man, this is the studio they recorded Pet Sounds in, and he's like, oh, for real? Oh, that's awesome. He thought that we were cool for doing that, and probably thought we were a bigger production than we actually were because we were able to record there. But also, the people at the studio, they were really kind because we were bringing in Weird Al, so they were like, oh, cool, yeah, you can just have the room, take as much time as you want, no big deal, because they were probably hoping that Weird Al would fall in love with the studio and want to record an album there. So that's where he was. He was at a really amazing studio out in LA that's like this big thing. The Foo Fighters recorded one of their most recent records there.
Cool.
It's such a cool background too. I mean, it's just like there's a lot to look at, if you can peel your eyes off of Weird Al just for a second, there's some cool stuff to look at, but we're just looking at Al here.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard to look at anything else. And he was so nice. Like, like everybody. I grew up in the '80s, so I was like peak Weird Al. I've always loved Weird Al. The first thing I ever saw with Weird Al was Fat. It was Fat was one of the first things I ever saw. But it was, I'm trying to remember. I don't know what the first thing I ever saw. Probably Eat It, actually, now that I think about it. Eat It was the first thing I ever saw from him.
Yeah.
And, then Fat, that was like, oh my God, that was like where it was at, And then, his Nirvana cover, I loved that. And the Star Wars stuff that he did, I thought was hilarious. Like every step of my life, like he was always doing fun parodies of stuff that I liked. And, of course, like everybody, I loved UHF. I thought it was like one of my favorite, when I saw it, I was like, this is the most amazing movie I've ever seen. And then also there's the fact that he's just a really famous person, he's beyond famous. He's Americana, he's like another level of fame, And so we're like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna meet Weird Al. This is pretty crazy. And so I'm trying not to be nervous because that's like I said, what everyone always told me is don't come across as a fan, even if you are. Just try to be super professional. Don't geek out. People don't like that. They'd rather Weird Al comes into the room, and it was just so funny. The first thing he says, "Hi, I'm Al," and we're like, yeah, we know. But he was just so polite, and he didn't come with an entourage. It's not like he had a bunch of people there. It was just him.
Right.
He came in. He was like so nice, so professional, so awesome. Like it was crazy, to get to meet someone that you've been a fan of, and then have him be like so sweet and so kind and so amazing. And then beyond that, usually when people sit down, I ask them I throw them a couple of softball questions. Over the course of making these 2 documentaries, I guess I've gotten better at interviewing people. Right. I kind of have learned the art a little bit. So it's like throw people a couple of softball questions so they can get warmed up. They can get used to me. They can get used to being on camera. And that usually works. Usually the first question, I'll ask someone, tell me about, how'd you get your start in show business? It's something that, probably won't be used in the documentary, but it just gets them used to me and looking at my face and all that stuff and forget about the lights and the lapel mic taped to them. But Weird Al, I just like, hey, can you talk a little bit about the animated? And he was just like this very nice person. He's like, hi, I'm Al. This is great. He's like, oh, that's cool. They recorded Pet Sounds here. That's awesome. This movie sounds really neat. Okay, great. He's just a very even-tempered, sweet man. And I was like, so tell us about the animated tales of GWAR. It's like, okay, so the animated tales of GWAR. It's a tale of GWAR who they want, and it was just like immediately he was that guy, he went from 0 to 11 in 1 second. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy does not need a softball. Someone needs to throw me a softball so I can catch up with this guy. And when I'm interviewing people, I'm always looking for a sound bite that I know can use. I'm like, I need them to sometimes like, hey, can you answer that again? But try to, I'll be like, do that a little cleaner. I'll be like, say that again, but maybe get to the point of it a little faster. And it was like every single thing that was coming out of his mouth was just gold. I was like, I can use that. And then he says something else, I can use that. I can use that. I can use that. And he has this line where he's like, I don't understand why people think, having fun and being funny and rocking can't go together. And he's like, I certainly feel they can. And it was like, oh my God, that's awesome. It was like he's like, if you're going to put on a show, put on a show, and it's just like everything he said was so awesome. And he came in and, we were there for like 35 minutes, which is pretty short for, most, I usually interview people for an hour or so.
Yeah.
But it was like everything we needed was there. And some of the guys that were like our producers that were there wasn't a lot of people. We try to keep a really lean crew. And this was also before COVID when we interviewed him too. So that wasn't something we were thinking about. Okay. But even then we run with a lean crew, 3 or 4 people. So it was me, our director of photography, a cameraman, and then our 2 producers were there. They videotaped me while I was interviewing with their phones. Okay. While I was interviewing Weird Al. And, keep in mind, like I said, the whole time I'm like, be cool, man. Like, just treat him like he's anybody. He's anybody else. He's anybody he's just a regular guy. Don't make it weird. And I thought I was doing that. I really did. I really thought in my head, I was like, yeah, that's great. Can you talk more about how, comedy and music can go together, and that's what in my head, that's how I'm acting. And immediately after I finished the interview, my producer's like, hey man, I know that we were filming Weird Al, but he's like, I think I got the best footage of all. And he showed me, and he had been recording me the whole time. And I've just got this stupid grin. Like it was like smiling from ear to ear the whole time. And I did not realize I was doing that. And I was like, what do you guys expect, man? That's Weird Al, like that's Weird Al. And they're like, yeah, but even when he was saying something that wasn't funny, you were still like smiling and laughing. I was like, whatever, guys, I don't care. Like I got to talk to Weird Al. I can die now. So yeah, it was an amazing. He's hilarious. I love it too. Whenever people that are funny on TV, you never know if is someone funny or do they just have good writers. I feel like so many people are like probably not funny that you see. They just have good writers,
right,
right. And
sure. Yeah.
So when I get to meet someone that's known for being funny and I'm like, oh my God, that guy actually is hilarious. Like that guy is really funny. He doesn't need writers. Like it gives me a good feeling because I'm like, you deserve it. You deserve all your fame. And that's how I felt about Weird Al. Like you're really nice and you're really talented. You're super nice and you're super talented. So I'm glad that you're really rich and famous. And Thomas Lennon was the same way. Like the whole time it was just like zinger, 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 like funny, funny, funny the whole time. So both of those guys were awesome, and I'm so lucky to have gotten to meet them, and I can't wait for people to see them in the movie because they're really funny.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be so awesome. So I'm curious, when you're setting up this conversation with Weird Al, obviously he knows he's coming in and he's going to talk about GWAR, but do you prep him ahead of time that this is what I want to talk about? I want to talk about the animated tales of GWAR and everything. So he comes into this interview with a rough idea of what you're going to ask him.
Yeah, we did. When we were talking to his people, they had requested just so he kind of, because he's a lot of the people that we interviewed aren't necessarily hardcore GWAR heads. Like Weird Al. He's a really intelligent guy, but it's not like he's the GWAR historian, and same, we interview Ethan Embry, Ethan Embry played the guy that Mark that they eat in Empire Records, and so a lot of people are like, well, what are you going to ask me about? So they can kind of be ready. So yeah, he asked for the questions in advance, and we were more than happy to get him to him. So that I'm sure that helped him, prepare. And again, to his credit, you could tell that he did prepare. He looked at those questions and gave us the respect. Our small little shoestring budget documentary, he gave us the respect of preparing for those questions quite well. So, I mean, what a guy, what a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked to a lot of people who have worked with Al, and that's par with the course. Al is just the greatest.
Golly, he really was. I mean, he was the greatest. I mean, and that goes to show, like, people that he treated me the same way he would have treated, like, Entertainment or Entertainment Tonight or something, and that's pretty rare, someone that's going to give some dude who's only made one film and has this small skeleton crew the same as like a big Hollywood production. Yeah, he was so kind and so nice, and yeah, I mean, he gave us gold, he really did. And I'm really grateful. For that. I mean, that's one thing I always say, these documentaries, you don't make a bunch of money, so you have to consider all the memories that you make and all the crazy stuff that you get to do that a lot of other people don't get to do. You have to kind of consider that your payment. Yes, I'm not going to make a bunch of money, but I got to meet Alex Winter, who's, Bill from Bill and Ted, who also directed, some of my favorite movies. And then, he's a great documentarian, by the way, too. He did The Dark Web, and he did a Zappa doc. I mean, he's so talented. Alex Winter, Ethan Embry, Weird Al Yankovic, Adam Green, who directed Hatchet and Holliston. Just all these like really high profile people. Like I got to hang out with them for 45 minutes. I was having a conversation with them. And the GWAR guys too, to get to talk to somebody that's as interesting as GWAR. And to get to be at their concerts right there in the front, when no one else gets to, is such an experience. So even if I don't make a lot of money, the fact that I'll get to keep that with me for the rest of my life is like, kind of a weird payment, an awesome payment that is in a lot of ways better than money.
Well, so your front row at a GWAR show, were you just covered in stuff, or did they purposely not squirt you?
Yeah.
You're just
Oh yeah. The first time I wanted to get sprayed, like I was going into it because I thought that would look so cool on the camera, to get it just splash right into the camera. So the first couple of shows, and then they were like, hey man, I'm trying to, I saw you there, I was trying to miss you, and I was like, oh, well, thanks for trying, but like, you don't have to. And then by the end, after about 4 or 5, I was like, okay, I'm not going to try. If I get spewed, I'll get spewed, but I'm not going to try anymore. Because at the beginning, I was trying to get, like, I just, what I'm talking about, like that shot where just like blood is just squirting right at the camera. I was like, that'll look so cool in the movie and for the trailer. And then after a while I was like, I don't necessarily need that anymore. Because we filmed 4 or 5 concerts, and we tried, which was a huge mistake, to keep up with GWAR. Like I wanted to film 4 or 5 shows in a row, and those guys are the hardest working people like I've ever met. I mean, they're just, especially in show business, they get to the venue at 10 a.m.
Wow.
And they start setting up. Because first they have to put carpet all over. Yeah, they have to put carpet all over the stage. They have to put what would you call it? Like plastic over all the monitors and the speakers. And then they have to set up their whole show. That's one thing that's different about them than like a horror film or even a play is, with a play you set up everything and then it's just there. But they have to break everything down, go to a new city and set it up every single day. And they tour for 3 months.
And they probably have to clean everything because it's covered in blood and guts and
totally. And that's insane that they do that, but they're such hardworking people. So basically what they do is, they get there at 10 a.m. They wrap up probably at 1. So then they immediately get on the bus. They have a bus driver who drives them from town to town. They have to immediately get on the bus and then just try to sleep for a few hours, because sometimes, the next town is 3 or 4 hours away. So they sleep on their bus. Well, we didn't have a bus. So we would have to, at 1:00, we would have to, pack all of our video equipment up, drive to the next town, and then sleep in a hotel. We didn't have a bus or anything like that.
Right.
And keeping up with those guys was nuts. So a lot of times, we'd wrap up and then I'd go to check in at my hotel covered in blood, and people would turn me away. They're like, we don't see your reservation. I was like, I've reserved it. It's Scott, but it's in there. And they're like, yeah, something must have happened. Sorry. So then I learned, like, the way we would film it is I would be up front, and then we would have our director of photography, Jacob Halinga, who is so talented. He would be in the very back with a zoom lens. So we were like, how about from now on you go check us into the hotel? Because I just didn't have time. It wasn't until I got to the hotel that then I could take a shower and clean myself. So yeah, we learned pretty quick, like, don't try to check into a hotel whenever you're covered in blood. Also, it's like 2:00 in the morning. Right. That's not a good look.
That's what you should have filmed. You should have filmed that stuff too. It could be like a side documentary, just like trying to live as someone following Guar around.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we totally should have filmed that. That would have made a really fun, like, bonus feature. Us getting turned away from hotels. Like, yeah, guys, no.
Well, speaking of bonus features, I think we need the footage of you smiling at Weird Al as a Blu-ray feature.
Oh, yeah. I know, right? I know. They were trying to make fun of me, and I was like, I don't care. Yeah, like, yeah, I was having the time of my life. Like, I was talking to Weird Al. Like, what am I going to do in my life that compares to that? Like, come on, man. Like, they're like, look at you, man. You're grinning like a dummy. And I'm like, hell yeah, I was. I'm not even embarrassed at all. But yeah, it was a great experience. It was so fun. And making this documentary has been really an honor and a pleasure, that these guys chose me, to get to yeah. I'm sure that's got to be a weird thing if someone's like, I want to make I want to tell the story of your life. I'm sure that the level of trust that takes for someone to go, okay, yeah, you can make a documentary about my life.
Right.
Pretty crazy.
So you're spending all this time, at least 12, 13 hours a day with GWAR. And so you got to see them not only on stage, but I imagine you got to see them off stage. What are the characters of GWAR like off stage when they're not in character?
Really cool. And that was one thing that I thought was awesome is, it's just like an actor, like,
okay. I'm
trying, like that guy that played Joffrey on Game of Thrones, he talks about how people always be like, screw you, Joffrey, and it's like, that shows you how good of an actor he was, that, he's a really nice guy, but it's like, no, that's a character I play. I'm not actually a horrible person.
Right.
So it was really cool to get to know I got to know the GWAR characters, the barbarians from outer space. I got to know those characters more, and they all have their own personality. And then I got to know the people behind them. And sometimes they were similar, and sometimes they were very different, because it's just a character that they play. And the thing that I thought was really cool is they're all different. They're all such different people. They're all over the place with their personality, and it makes it even more interesting. Michael Dirks, who is the longest running member of GWAR, over 30 years he's been in that band, and he plays Ballsack the Jaws of Death, which is kind of one of the most easily recognizable GWAR characters. He's got the big bear trap for a head.
Yeah.
And he's just such a, he plays Ballsack the Jaws of Death, and he's just such a sweet, like, he's a very kind, soft-spoken, really, the way that he talks almost is like poetry in a way. Like, he's just you could tell everything he says. He doesn't say a lot, and he says it really quietly, but everything he says is really well thought out. Just a really, really sweet, sensitive guy. And then, Michael Bishop, who is the current singer of GWAR, the Berserker Blothar is his character. He's got a PhD, you know. He's like just a very intelligent guy. Talking to him was great because he didn't romanticize things. He didn't, you know, he just was told more like a scientist. This happened, and then this happened, and this happened. He didn't, you know, he doesn't look at the past with rose-colored glasses. He doesn't romanticize things. He tells it pretty much just like it is. And then, you know, the two guys that I probably knew the best were Bob Gorman and Matt McGuire, and they're the two artists.
Okay.
That you know, GWAR used to be this huge, you know, it used to be almost 50-50. Like there were as many artists as there were musicians. And now really it's just Bob and Matt. And they were young guys that came in as just like assistants and interns that kind of just did the dirty work no one else wanted to do. And now they are the main guys, which I think is really a cool story that we tell, that evolution in the film. But, you know, I know them real well, and they're awesome guys. They're just cool guys. Like, I would geek out about comic books with them and stuff like that. Because they're more on the art side, so they're really influenced by Jack Kirby and, you know, all sorts of stuff like that, you know, Road Warrior, stuff like that. And so we would geek out about sci-fi and comic books a lot. Like, every time I would go, I would end up talking to Matt about what was our favorite run of X-Men or what was our favorite run of Fantastic Four, because I'm a huge comic book dork. And yeah, they're just all over the place, and the majority of them aren't anything like their characters at all. And then some of them kind of are, you know. Some of them are a little, you can tell, like some of the guys, their character is like a exaggerated version of themselves, you know, just turning their personality up to 11. But they're all fascinating people. Like, honestly, you could make a documentary about any of the guys in GWAR.
Wow.
And girls. Like, you could make a documentary about any of them. They're fascinating people. And our documentary, you know, is a little bit longer than a lot of documentaries, and just making it as short as it is was a real challenge.
How long is it?
It's a little under 2 hours.
Okay.
It's about 150 minutes, which isn't crazy, but it's also, you know, the sweet spot people always tell you is 90 minutes, you know, and ours is more like 110 minutes.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, it's 30 years. They make 3 movies.
Yeah.
There's also there's people that die. There's people that OD. There's people that get shot. There's all this stuff that happens in the movie that, you know, and we've got twice as many people as most documentaries do, you know, because we've got the band and then we've also got the artists. So, you know, it's just kind of like when we tried to shorten it, it actually felt longer because when you don't know who the people are and you don't really care about them, you're like, who's this guy? You know, we have to make you care about all these people so that when they experience highs and lows, you're experiencing it with them. So, 110 minutes is as short as we could get it down. We just couldn't find a way to get it shorter than that.
So I understand not only do you talk to the current members of GWAR, you talk to as many of the past living members that you could track down as well. And I'm just curious, you know, this is a band that's got a lot of controversy and history behind it. Was there any resistance, you know, on their part, or anyone who would just refuse to participate from the past members?
There was a little, yeah, for sure. I think the fact that I was not a member of GWAR, and I'm not, the movie is not made by GWAR. It's made by us with GWAR's cooperation. And I always think those documentaries are better, you know, whenever it's made. You've got to have somebody on the outside making your doc. Whenever people, you know, whenever I see like a documentary about someone and then that person is like the executive producer or the director, I'm always like, okay, how real is this, you know?
Right.
So the fact that I wasn't a member of GWAR and I'm not associated and I'm not partial to any member, I'm not loyal to any person over the other, helped me a lot. So to answer your question, less than I thought I would have. Like, I thought that I would have real oppositions, because there are some people that things did not end well, you know, at all. And I thought I would have some opposition there, but it's like, people are like, nah, I want to, you know, and that's another thing that I said from the very beginning is there is no Kurt Cobain of GWAR. You know, what Kurt Cobain was to Nirvana, there isn't that in GWAR. You know, Dave Brockie is like one of the greatest frontmen of all time. He's a genius. You're not going to meet someone very few people meet somebody like him in their life, but he is not GWAR. he's, this, it's a collective. All of those people are GWAR. If one person, it's like Jenga. If you had taken any of these people out, it wouldn't be what it is. And so I think a lot of people liked that approach, that it's like, I'm not focusing on any person more than the other. I'm showing that this is a true collective.
Right.
Every person mattered. Yeah, some people might have been a bigger block in the Jenga than others, but they're all a block of it, and it wouldn't have worked without them. So yeah, I think that the fact that I was not GWAR, and I'm not affiliated with GWAR, helped me a lot, because there were a lot of people that don't talk to each other anymore. That they wouldn't have talked to a member of GWAR even, but they did talk to me because I'm not there. And it was pretty awesome to get to see. There's some cool stuff that happens in the doc that I don't want to spoil, but you see some stuff with that. You see some relationships change while we were making it, which is, I think, awesome. That's like whenever you're like, oh, this feels like real documentary filmmaking. I'm not just interviewing people, like I'm actually seeing this shape of things change, and people's relationship changing, people getting over things, and their views changing, and doing things they swore they never would. So it's pretty cool. It was an awesome experience. So yeah, there was a lot of controversy, and there was, but I think that these guys, they're all a little bit older, and I think they're all in an experience of, they're at a point in their life where they're healing, from a lot of things in the past.
Right.
And to get to see that healing kind of happen in real time was pretty amazing.
I did see GWAR one time when it was in college, and it was amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Now I want to see him again after talking to you.
You have to. It's so much fun. They're better than ever, There's a lot of people that, there's no GWAR without Dave Brockie. And to that, I just say, well, go check them out.
That's why I'm so glad you said that, because I heard the guy from GWAR died, and I was like, okay, I guess I can't see GWAR anymore. I guess I wasn't following. I didn't really understand it. So I'm really, now hearing you talk about them, I want to see them again.
Yeah, it's great. The performances are amazing. It's still awesome, and one analogy that people use is like GWAR is kind of like Saturday Night Live. There's always a rotating cast.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Dave Brockie is kind of like the Bill Murray. He's the greatest person that's ever been on there. But there were other people that are really awesome too. The Dana Carvey, Chris Farley. Come on, man, those guys are great too. And Michael Bishop, who's their singer now, he was their original bass player.
Oh,
so
okay.
How fortunate. So he kind of gave him the street cred, because everyone's like, oh, who's going to follow up Dave Brockie, And if they had just found some new young guy, I don't think fans would have been into it. But this guy he was on the very first GWAR record, Hello. He's been there since not day one, but pretty close to day one. And, he left GWAR in the 90s, and he kind of came back, and he's their singer now. And even when he was the bass player, he would usually sing a song or two on all the records. Because, GWAR, Dave Brockie was their lead singer, but other people would sing, Sly Minster Hyman or the Sexecutioner or Techno Destructo. They would sing songs too. And Michael Bishop, God, I tell you, he's got a crazy voice. Like, it's worth it. Crazy live show aside, that guy's got a voice that's like so crazy. It's so high. It's so he's just really good. And so how fortunate they were to have him, to go, we've got this guy where it doesn't seem disrespectful to Dave's legacy because he was Dave's friend. He was Dave's right-hand man. He was there with Dave at pretty much the very beginning of putting out albums. So he made sense, but he also made sense in that he's just a really good singer too. So
that's
yeah,
cool.
you just got to go see him. You got to go see him with Blothar. It's crazy. He's just this big, huge, hulking, huge, just menacing character right in the middle of the stage.
Oh man, yeah, I definitely want to go again.
Cool.
That's so fun.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
So Scott, how do we see this? Is there plans for it to come out? I know that it recently premiered in Austin, Texas at Fantastic Fest. how can people who don't live in Austin like Dave and I see This Is GWAR?
We're doing an online festival that's in early October called Nightstream. And you can, if you just Google Nightstream, you can find it. And it's going to be online where people can buy tickets. And it's basically 3 or 4 festivals that are all hurting because the COVID pandemic is still happening. So festivals are all kind of hurting.
Yeah.
And so they said, let's get together and do an online. It's like kind of an amalgamation of 3 or 4 festivals that are all coming together and doing an online festival. And you can watch it there. So
very cool.
If you want to watch it soon, get on Nightstream and you can watch it there. Like it's coming in October. I don't have the date yet that it's going to be on Nightstream. We just kind of agreed to do it and just started talking to them. But just follow Nightstream or go to their website and you can do that. And then as far as a mass release, we're talking to a couple of different platforms right now, and nothing is really set in stone yet. But it's some pretty cool places that I'm a fan of are interested in putting it out, and
very cool.
I hope that it comes through. GWAR is on tour until the end of the year right now. Like I said, their work ethic is crazy. They're from October, November, December. They're touring basically until the end of the year.
Wow!
So we want to do a theatrical release and really release the film when they're not doing anything else, because we want them to be a big part of it, and possibly do a theatrical release with them there, doing a Q&A or doing something in costume. So that'll happen early next year. But if you want to see it now, please check out Nightstream or follow us. We're on Facebook and Instagram. If you just look up This Is GWAR, you can follow us there so that whenever we do release it, you can see when that's going to happen, because we're going to start posting as we find more stuff. We're going to post it there. So follow Nightstream and follow This Is GWAR if you're interested in this thing and want to see it.
Awesome. Well, Dave and I definitely want to see it. And I am so excited to also check out your other documentary that you talked about briefly, The Orange Years, which I believe is streaming on Hulu. And it's also available, everywhere to rent, to buy. So I'm really excited to look at that, because I was definitely a Nickelodeon guy as a kid. We are so excited to hear all about This Is GWAR. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, Dave and I will be the first people to watch it. We cannot wait.
Great. Yeah, well, thanks for reaching out. This has been really fun. I like to get to talk about different aspects of the film. Like this has been really great. So I appreciate you reaching out to me, and this has been a blast.
I cannot wait to see This Is GWAR. So join us in following Nightstream for updates on when the film will be available. Head over to nightstream.org or at Nightstreamfest on Instagram and Twitter.
When Scott was talking about how exhausting it is to be out on the road following GWAR night after night, that reminded me a lot of tour chasing after Al.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Well, I guess the main difference between us is that when you and I go back to the hotel after the concert, we're not usually covered in fake blood.
Yeah, good point. I was wondering, Ethan, if GWAR were to cover a Weird Al song, what would be your choice?
I think the most fun would be Nature Trail to Hell, because there's plenty of opportunities for blood and guts to squirt out. They can squirt Cheese Whiz on the audience. I think that would be amazing.
That sounds absolutely wonderful.
Speaking of, Dave, did you ever want to cover yourself in chewed up bubblegum and roll around in the dirt?
No, not really.
Did you ever get the sensation that you wanted to ghost direct a shot-for-shot remake of an 1832 musical number by Busby Berkeley in an Olympic-sized pool full of lychee bubble tea?
An 1832 musical? No, I can't say that's crossed my mind.
What about weaving a cape of cruciferous vegetables and parasailing off the Gateway Arch in St. Louis during the halftime of the Settlers of Catan World Championships?
Actually, that one's a yes, but I already did it last Thursday.
Well, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then you'll love Waiting for Lunch Radio. Hosts Joe and Stashu serve up a free-form musical mixtape salad that will have you saying, "Boy, I certainly find it enjoyable to listen to this program."
Hear Waiting for Lunch Radio on Mixcloud and find it at waitingforlunch.com.
And also, this week's episode is brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota beautiful, it's also jamming gears and hauling freight.
Darwin, Minnesota is home to Trained Monkey Truckin'.
Trained Monkey Truckin' transports fresh produce, general freight, metal sheet, motor vehicles, lumber, and building materials, among at least 1,832 other items.
Wow, they do all of that? Do they also transport brink and stone walls?
Well, I don't not see either brink or stone walls on the list of 1,832 items and materials they transport.
Wow, that's a triple negative.
It's up to you to decide, you know?
So whenever you've got a load to carry, Trained Monkey Truckin' will get those 18 wheels a rolling until the break of dawn.
So hire Trained Monkey Truckin', and you'll never be late for your appointment down at the hair salon.
Visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next expedition. Discover Darwin more than just the twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to visit discoverdarwin.biz.
Each week, we're able to bring you our podcast absolutely free thanks to our sponsors Burrito, Discover Darwin, Jackson Scoggins, David Grant at wolfandwool.com, Joe and Stashu from Waiting for Lunch Radio, and Angel Valenzuela and David Cash.
And thanks to our amazing close personal friend Patreon supporters, Zeb, Allison, Blair, Frank from the Bank, Kenneth, Jared, Jake, Javier, and UHF. And thanks to Summer and everyone else in our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family.
If you enjoy our family-friendly weekly Weird Al podcast, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/2000inch or by picking up some pretty stinking majestic official Dave and Ethan's 2000inch Weird Al podcast merchandise at shop.2000inch.com. You can check out our new line of Discover Darwin products, or you can be like Chad Kelson, aka Metal Al, and pick up a Gill and Chill t-shirt. Head on over to shop.2000inch.com.
Grab your copies of Black and White and Weird All Over and check out our special book series where author John Bermuda Schwartz walks us through the book page by page and picture by picture. You can check out the first 7 episodes now, or you can head on over to Patreon and check out the first 8 episodes, because our Patreon supporters always get to hear all bonus episodes early.
We love hearing from our listeners and other Weird Al fans. Join our Facebook community and post about Weird Al or more by visiting group.2000inch.com. And we also love it when we receive voicemail via our official 27-hour-a-day podcast hotline, 347-SPATULA. You might even hear your message on a future episode.
For everything about our podcast, including incredible past episodes and guests, be sure to visit WeirdOwlPodcast.com or 2000inch.com and keep up on new episodes, podcast news, and events by following at 2000inch on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thank you for subscribing and leaving awesome reviews on Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Spotify, Stitcher, or the podcast app of your choice. And if you want a quick and easy way to listen to the podcast, just say, "Hey Alexa, play Dave and Ethan's 2000inch Weird Al podcast."
Thank you once again to our guest, Scott Barber. Also thanks to Dysequilibrium, Owen Watson, UH Jeff Nucera, Jason McDonald, Mike Minnick, Chad Kelson, a.k.a. Metal Al, and Amanda Cohen. Thank you to Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West for our incredible theme song, and thank you to Weird Al Yankovic, as this podcast probably would not exist without him. And a big thanks to all of you, our listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters, and sponsors, and everyone else who makes our podcast possible.
Thank you for listening to Dave and Ethan's 2000inch Weird Al podcast. And always remember to gill and chill.
Hey Dave, next week is episode 127-inch.
Yeah. And
that's a very important Weird Al number, Dave.
127. No, sorry, don't get it.
Dave, think harder. 127.
Oh, 127. I get it now, because it's 1,832 less than the year Weird Al was born.
Well, duh!
Well, everyone knows what my birth year is, but Ethan, when's your birth year?
Well, my agent very specifically said not to tell anyone my real birth year, Dave.
Really? Why would that be?
Well, they said if the truth gets out, I can kiss those sweet, sweet, bearded, balding, high school age acting roles goodbye.
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 126-inch.
The podcast about Weird Al for Weird Al.
And I've just got this stupid grin, like it was like smiling from ear to ear the whole time. And I did not realize I was doing that. And I was like, what do you guys expect, man? That's Weird Al.
Cool.